Okay, so welcome back here. This is the continued version of the previous lesson. So quickly, we'd like to create the 3D container and first of all, deleting the emitter as it's not required. And just similarly like the way we did created the gigantic storm, the similar way we like to create with the dusty winds blowing all across the streets container. And we just position them up very clearly. And okay, we'd like to switch this a little bit more higher, and I think so that is done. So here we would like to change the size of the grid as well. Switch that back to the object mode so that it will be easier for you to memorize that this is the y-axis, not the any other one. So the x, y, and z. For the x, we would like to go for the 20. It's quite a little bigger one. And for the y, we'd like to go for the 5. I think so 6 would do best. Okay. And for the Z, we'd like to go for the maybe 4 or maybe, yeah, I think the 4 will gonna work. So with that, we could adjust the emitter. Okay. Now shift select the object and let's say emit from the object. Okay. Now the emitter is a plane, but we know that we need to emit the fluid only from the white sections or from the texture side, from the brighter texture side, from the white texture, not from the black one. So what we're going to do here is that we could just open the, all right, so we do have the fluid emitter over here and we need to open the hypershade and we're going to drop the texture over the density emission map. The job is done first. Now the case is that we do not need any fuel. We also do not need any heat. The density needs to be quite high, so I'd like to give it the 10 as a start. And of course, we are good to have the turbulence also. So the turbulence need to be quite high as well, 100. Speed 1, rest, everything needs to be 1. And that is also done. So before I press the play button and would like to see the very low resolution of the fluids, let me just gonna crank them up to the 100. And let me just gonna hide the plane and take a little bit darker background. The boundary of the x is required to be the none, or no, it's required to be both the sides because otherwise they'll cross 500 or 600 resolution, so that's quite high. For the boundary y, we like to give it to the minus y for the boundary so that we don't want the fluids to put these voxels push back. And for the z, let remain it to be both sides. Okay. And before we hit the play, we also required to switch on the auto resize. Otherwise, the fluid will not going to, scale in or resize accordingly. And if I gonna play the timeline, you'll see that, oh, wow, so nice. But of course, there are lots of issues. And no doubt the look and feel of the dust is quite a good, and it seems to be like that. We actually are not required to do anything. And look at the speed of the fluids. I mean, at 100 resolution, it's still, catching the things, which is quite a nice. But now we have to come back and have to focus on our exact look and feel. So what you're going to need to do here is that, first of all, I'm just going to close the unwanted sections or the tabs. I like to go back to the density mode, first of all, and have to, I guess, we need to work upon the buoyancy. Let's put them to the 10. Of course, with the 10 buoyancy, we're gonna have a lot of high speedy winds. That is just we need in our case. But again, you could see that the fluids are being getting accumulated in the top sections of our voxel grid. So what are we gonna need to do in that case? We'll fix them up later. Let's just do one thing, move step by step. And the very good thing that we missed here it is, first of all, that under the dynamic simulations, we are required to give the dam, first of all. so that it will going to make the fluid a little bit more calm and settle them down. Okay, that's okay. You wish you may could go for a little higher version of the damp as well. That would be easier for the fluids to get settled more fast. Okay, that's quite good. Now the second thing would be the utilizations of the substeps. For example, I do have the two substeps. You're going to see the fluids may will going to get a little bit more little slow, but the solving will get much better because these are high speedy winds. So it is required that you may could use the substeps to two or maybe to the three as well. It's not a problem. Now comes the solver quality. The 20 is really very less. We like to give it to at least let's say 75 or maybe a little bit more. So with that, the fluid will going to retain their shapes for a longer period of the time. So the solver quality also will going to preserve the mass of the fluids as well as the the overall momentum of the fluids. So that is actually something good which we are doing. And now the most important thing is the forward advection. This is a very very important attribute to be get utilized. Along with that, we are also required to work upon the ambient and the substeps as well. So now you're going to notice that the fluid nature will going to get a little bit changed, but I'm happy that the way they are coming, the way they are approaching is quite a good. However, if you really wish not to include the forward advection, you may could switch that off as well. Again, just depending up to your artistic decision. But I do recommend that the utilization of the forward advection would be quite good. But again, we'll like to leave the decision up to you only. So let's say for right now we are utilizing the forward advection, and let me just gonna come back down again. We'll obviously need to work upon the dissipation of the fluid, otherwise they just keep on blowing, keep on rocking, which obviously the way we don't want. Okay, that's looking quite good in fact. And now we also required to give the noise. So we given the noise. Again, we are required to give the gradient force as well. So I'm giving 50 as a start, and also like to see that how the behavior will like to get changed, because the gradient force will going to provide an overall force. You could say all the XYZ vectors of the fluids will get affected and they move in all across the direction, which is quite a good again. Uh, okay, that's quite a good. So for the velocity, which is the last attribute, but it's very important, we need to work upon the Shrill. Again, we like to give it the less Shrill, and the noise again is 0.55. The turbulence I'm thinking to use because the dust may could change their directions once they are blowing all across the street. So you may could require to give very less strength, and the speed could get increased a bit more. And I believe so that just all about the settings for the for such kind of a reaction. Of course, we are required to play with the opacity graph that we haven't touched yet, and still not a problem. So what I'm thinking is that we like to cover the other attributes of the fluid container, including the shading, lighting, as well as the opacity graph in the next lesson. All right, so I'm taking the break and see you in the next lesson.